Okay.
Bear with me. Let me just do this. Okay.
Okay, Larry, we are recording. Hi, everybody in class. We have a guest speaker via Zoom, and this is a recorded Zoom, so you're not seeing this live. Our guest is Larry Steven Londre. Larry is somebody that I met many years ago at Gray Advertising. We both worked there. We've had interesting career paths that have been very parallel in what we've done. Larry is a communications specialist, so he has worked in advertising and marketing, primarily in areas that relate to communications. He's worked at very large agencies, very large organizations. He's been a consultant with a lot of companies. He's also taught at numerous universities, and he still lectures quite a bit at various universities and law schools. And so Larry, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you jump into your presentation. I'll be on the sidelines and I'll ask questions if we need to along the way, but go ahead and take it away.
Hey, thank you. Hey, thanks everyone. And I'm really delighted to be here and to do this presentation for you. And my goal is to make you better and to be more marketable. I know that you come from many different degrees or potential degrees, and that we're going to talk about communication and presentations and jobs and your brand and your resume. So COVID-19 pandemic is defining what good business leadership and employees look like. It is putting a stress on everyone, and it's making demands of everyone that few people could have even seen or imagined just months ago. And I end up having this ad slogan from, I wish the coronavirus started in Vegas, because what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But obviously we have a United States problem, but we have a world problem. So one of the things, my great advice is that I want you not to compare yourself to your friends or contemporaries or predecessors, but to nor your brothers and sisters, but I want you to dream and I want you to shoot higher. I want you to be better and try to be better than just yourself rather than comparing yourself to somebody else. What we're going to do about the shoot higher and great advice that I want to make you better, we're going to talk about your online presence. We're also going to talk about your Zoom presence. We're going to talk about idea generation, interviewing, jobs, resumes. I'm going to show you an example, a case history that I've been following for 2 years on Facebook. And then I have 3 different places that you can get additional resources, and you just go online. They're all free. My 2 websites, Laundry Marketing and 9Ps, and then Brian and I shared 2 guides on marketing. So with Zoom calls, and I have a family member who does Zoom calls with a high school, but I've also been keeping track of this. And that if you look at my background, and I've been collecting different backgrounds, but this is my office. But I want to be sure that you have a proper background. And then we have a technology specialist who is in our property management group, who only uses a static photo. And we always question that, how great a person could she be? I don't think you should be eating on camera. I don't think you should just use that photograph. I want to be sure that you haven't just woken, that you're not just an in time or on. I want you to be an on time person. I want you to be connected, and that's both emotionally and physically. I don't think it's a good idea. It may be to look up something, but being a multitasker, and I started using these headphones last month, and it really does concentrate and helps me concentrate, and with all the background noises. I want you to be you've considered all things kind of person, or you're always learning and receptive person, which is what I am. And then enough bandwidth is either a physical thing, or it could be, are you really listening? And then people have one way of looking at themselves as an alter ego on Zoom, and that may not be the same person that they actually are. And I'll give you a couple slides on that. So when you're looking for a job, or what's happening now, some of these industries are really hot and doing well, like technology and online retail and the cashless society. I even pulled premium chocolate is up, home improvement is up. I put plus and minus on divorce rates. Divorce rates are up, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's kind of mixed, I think. And then what's going poorly, well, you don't want to be in retail with brick and mortar or a mall right now. You don't want to be in materials. You don't want to be in leisure and entertainment or financial. All of these will come back, but we're talking about the next 1, 2, maybe 2.5 years that this pandemic is going to influence and is influencing everything. One of the things that I collected a slide that some crazy time, there was a meeting and somebody said, we need a film with a tornado full of sharks. What's fascinating that in 2017 in July, that $4.5 billion gross, and it actually was at that time beating Disney's Pixar. So I think giving advice is a good idea for everyone. And here's Sharknado 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And yes, I have seen them. 5 and 6 are not as good. So what's the most expensive presentation? When you're doing a Zoom call that is free, but in the Super Bowl, it's $183,000 a second for a company. And Brian and I have gone through and seen every Super Bowl spot, and we present them every year. And that doesn't even include the creative. So that's a pretty expensive decision. And it's a very expensive way that some people just don't even like the television spot. So I want to do a little mini history and a case history on Facebook. And when we're talking about users, that Facebook is selling the number of users. So I want you to think about advertisers, buyers, and visitors, that there is, and this was researched even from last month, that there's a level of trust or it's split, and that 86.6% rarely trust Facebook. 8.4% feel the content is not or untrustworthy. That's hard for advertisers to accept. So I'm going to go back 5 years that there was a developer called 643 that sued Facebook, and they had a free website app that relied on access to photos and people in bikinis. Facebook said no. 643 ended up suing them. It started the entire Cambridge Analytica Facebook fiasco for them. Why am I presenting this? That if you're going to make a mistake, and this is not in the lawsuit, but it exposed a tremendous amount of confidential information, because it's called redacting or blacked out, and they blacked out copy. But what several people found out is that you could cut and paste what was in blacked out that you couldn't read, and you just dropped it into a Word document or a text file, and you could read that. And that became that started the whole issue. So now I'm going to go to 2 years ago, and the chief product officer, a guy named Chris Cox, he ended up introducing the brand new CMO, or the chief marketing officer, and his name was Antonio. And he introduced him in the press and on television as an extraordinary reputation in the industry. He was a leader, a marketer, an operator. He was wise, gracious, and deeply principled human being. I read those words, and for some reason that people don't use this in the press. And it's a little bit of maybe trying to be humorous, but we're talking about a pretty big time job with a lot of issues that Facebook has. Chris Cox left the company. He ended up, and they did an awful lot of research saying, what are the new chief marketing officer, what are the problems? We talked about trust already. They needed to improve their products and services. That was part of his responsibility. He said, I collected this, we need to tell the story outside what we know is true inside. His audience was the people that were working for Facebook when he used that. They have fake news issues, they have diversity issues, they have targeting issues, they have reach issues, audience issues. They have a lot of issues that he stepped into. Then I found in the New York Times that he was tasked with, he had to clean up the brand and unify all of its sub-brands. This is an amazing task that they introduced him to. Well, I've kept track of this, and last month, we're talking about, 34 days ago, he ended up announcing that he is going to depart. His salary was $280,000, and it did not include probably a bonus, and did not include stock options. The average United States chief marketing officer is $250,000. He left in the wake of 1,000 brands had abandoned the Facebook platform advertising on it because of hate speech and misinformation policies. Then, I think as part of his severance, he ended up saying this, that Facebook needs to find the right balance between preserving freedom of speech and eliminating hateful speech. And and this is a generation defining question. And the reason I bring this up is that this is so high level, but everyone has to figure out when they're in meetings and presentations, interviewing, what is the balance of whatever they're trying to look at. And this company knows that that this is an important task, and this is why I think was part of his exit interview. And I thought it would be helpful that a chief marketing officer's tenure is about 2 years. It's between 23.6 months and 27.5 months. A chief financial officer, a CFO, is about 5.3 years, and a CEO is 7.4 years. So it's interesting that in the span of one CEO's reign, you would have multiple chief marketing officers. So let's get down to some jobs, resumes, and interviewing tips. I do a presentation, and it's called Street Sense, Common Sense, or Get Smart. And how is somebody going to be advertising for a $240,000 a year job on a street traffic sign, and this is for a trainee? And so I took this, I've taken shots from all over the world. I thought it was interesting that I'm a great believer in luck, and I find the harder I work, the more I have of it. But Thomas Jefferson said that. And I thought it was interesting that more than a dozen of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were 35 years or younger. And we have a presidential election that are people much older than 44 and 35. Your online presence and branding. You are branding yourself every single meeting you're in, every single phone call. Every day you place a brick in this tower, a wall of your brand and your reputation. That's why I'm a big advocate of working well in teams, because those same people can help you find a job, or you may hire them later. Everything that you do is part of your brand. This build your brand comes off of a sign that was in Cairo, Egypt. So every day, big or small, you are adding or subtracting to your brand or tower. So in Twitter, and I'll do a couple slides on Twitter, things are taken out of context. You have the right to remain silent. Anything that you say can be taken out of context and put on Twitter, and then it'll be the whole thing. So be careful what you're posting. So I found this today, that Twitter tested during the summer, and they were influencing and asking readers to be better informed, and actually to have read the tweet and to have read the actual content before tweeting or retweeting. Isn't that incredible? So obvious. So then you're going to have HR directors that are going to search for you on social media. And so in this one, according to your LinkedIn profile, you're focused, disciplined achiever, but according to Facebook, you love Jack Daniels and are pretty comfortable with your body. You don't want an HR director finding that out about you. You know, there are two sides to every pancake. There are two ways of looking at this, and your way may or may not have all of the facts. So be careful when you're saying that somebody's right or wrong, that you need to look at that other side of that pancake. I was watching 90 Day Fiance, and there was a simple question from one of those guys that are getting paid, and they asked him at a job interview, give me 3 words to describe yourself. And it was like, he was terrible at it. So what I ended up doing is I thought, oh my gosh, I can put that in with my other list of questions that I have, and I'll give you a document that's free of charge. So these questions are probably the most basic and maybe the first question that you will get. And that is, so tell me about yourself, or why should we hire you? Or what do you bring to the table, our company, or the party? Or tell me a story on a topic you care a lot about. All of these questions are going to be asked of you, and you should prepare, rehearse in front of people, in front of the mirror. The CEO of the AOL and Yahoo called Oath, he would ask, what would other people say about you? And you need to be prepared for that kind of question, because that's a tougher question to do. I want you to look at your resume, and I want you to look at and stress your accomplishments. I want you to use your accomplishments, your responsibilities, and actual statistics. Maybe you worked in the fraternity or sorority on an event. Maybe you can easily volunteer in normal times as a volunteer at a charity or at a 5K run. These are the things that you need to add to your resume, and you want to use action verbs like develop, manage, created. Um, you don't use I help develop unless it is actual, but see if you can add statistics, including any campus activities. On the two websites, there are two documents that are free. On the bottom right is the jobs, how to find and land a job, and it's my 2020 edition, and that's free. You can go to it, and then I know some of you are marketing majors. We have some supply people, we have accounting, and then I put together after the 4 Ps. I thought that it could be better in the digital age, so I came up with the 9 Ps, and that is copyrighted for the last 13 years, and that's free of charge too. Going back to resumes and interviewing, and that packet I just talked about is, I think it's 31 pages, but sometimes on the job interviewing with other people, simply say, I don't know when you don't know. And I'll add to that, I don't know, but I'll find out. And in an advertising agency, that is so important to do, or with clients, or with even any kind of meetings. You're building credibility. I want you to sweat the details. I want you to proofread everything, and this includes email. And sometimes, if it's so important, read it backwards, every single word. And spell check doesn't work for everyone, and that looking for typos is really important. And that have at least 2 other friends, people, aunts, uncles, people that you trust, look at and bounce off and see if you can get input from them. And then as simple as the accuracy of a prospect's name, that people spell names differently, and sometimes an E should be an I. And look at their title, the company, and the address. And I can tell you, with all of the digital aspects and people, that if you lack the attention to detail and you get the name of a prospect wrong, that could disqualify you for a spot that you maybe really want. I read an article that I thought was helpful, and it was disagreeing in an interview. And I thought, well, that doesn't always happen, but I pulled it out and I thought, I'm going to add it to this presentation. And it talks about, if you disagree, how do you do it? And look at critical thinking. And the farther you're in business, maybe the better that you'll end up having more disagreements in an interview. But don't forget that interviews are an opportunity to showcase your expertise. So you may agree or disagree, or say, there's 2 ways of looking at that subject, and that the interviewer is going to look at you and say, oh, that's actually a very precise way of looking at it, and it's a more intelligent way of looking at it. I want you to look at being cooperative mindset for these disagreeing, and acknowledge that other views than your own, like my 6 and the 9 there. You want to see, don't be emotional if you can, and you have facts, present it as, this is what I believe and why. And if you're wrong, it depends on what your explanation is, because no person has all of the information. And this is important in the relevance of looking for jobs. In looking for jobs, maybe in the next year, 2 years, 10 years now, think about this. And I'm reading a book right now, and it's the Reed Hastings on Facebook, Rules and No Rules. And he asked this question, or I pulled this out of it. It's not a specific question it is, but you can ask yourself, is a job important and it makes you tick, or it doesn't make you tick? And I can tell you that for me, marketing jobs make me tick, and I was lucky that I was in high school and I figured that out. Oprah Winfrey said, my philosophy is, not only are you responsible for your life, but doing the best at this moment puts you in the best place. So being prepared and having an interview, prepare for it, understand what different ways they could go, and rehearse those answers that I've given you. Here's on the job And I think this is really helpful. It is so helpful for me to tell you that it's okay to ask a supervisor, am I doing this right? Can I double check this with you? They're going to look at you favorably if you do that. And what is the deadline? What a key to that is that the supervisor may say, you know, the deadline's 2 days earlier than what you think it is because they may need to fix it for you. But you're going to look like a better employee if you say, am I doing this right? Could I double check this? You got a minute to work on this. And also, don't wait for the very last minute. Brian and I both agree with this. I ask more questions of more people to learn stuff every single day. And every class I teach, I learn. And so I have a couple of questions ready for, have a couple of questions ready for each interview. And these can be both either specific or they can be general. But the better you are and the more time you get at interviewing, the better off you're going to be. So when I talk about emails, follow-up, and thank you notes, we have another family member that was looking for a job, and there was between 100, 200, maybe 300 people looking for the job. And he said, well, I'm going to send an email in 2 or 3 days. I said, no, you're going to send it today. You're going to follow up. And then there were two ways that we asked him to do it. It was a major media company in Southern California. And we said, you're going to drop off a thank you note. And then if there's another follow-up, you're actually going to FedEx it to the person and you're following up. And you're going to, it's hard to stand out if there's even 100 people. And I know of 800, 1,000 people that interviewed for a certain job. That's not who answered a post. It's actually, they were looking for the job, but they'll interview maybe 10 to 20 or 30 people at the end for these major jobs. So I want to wrap up, but do you want to know the most important concept? Maybe I'm going to give you probably 3 that I can give you after all my years of business, marketing, and advertising experience. And that concept is, it really is networking. It's getting to know people, working with people, volunteering, doing the things that other people don't do. But it's not just networking, because you need to add hard work and smart work for that. And a really major thing is effectively working with others and working with teams. Everything is going to be team oriented now. Brian and I have talked about this, and I've been married for 42 years, and I apologize more than I think I need to, but it's just easier. So whether you're on the job or a personal relationship, I apologize, and you are right, it's easier to say. So my last thing is, it has to do with the Lakers will probably be in the finals. They're 3-1 right now against Denver, and with that, Magic Johnson was interviewing LeBron 2.5 years ago. He had a 15 to 20 minute drive, if you're in Southern California, from part of Brentwood on the west side, West LA, to the other side where one of LeBron's homes were. And LeBron, they set up an appointment time of 9:01, Magic and he. So with about a 15 to 20 minute drive, how early did Magic Johnson get to the appointment before 9 o'clock? This is the future of the Lakers. They hadn't been in the playoffs in more than a dozen years, and it's a $153 million contract, and LeBron had multiple teams that he could have gone to. Magic got there 1 hour in advance. And the reason I use this is being on time for an interview and being prepared for an interview are so important. Being on time, if you're not on time, you will not get the job. I'm almost going to guarantee you that. So I want to thank you. I know Brian may have a question or two, but I'm here to support you and the University of Texas and Brian.
Thanks, Larry. Yeah, I do have a question or two. You know, one of the questions that I have for you, just while we have a couple minutes to wrap up, you've obviously hired a lot of people in your career. You've fired people in your career. You've worked on a lot of teams. We're going to have a lot of our students from UT Dallas that'll be graduating soon. Some are graduating this semester. A lot might be graduating in the spring. Some are busy interviewing right now. They're going to be interviewing during COVID, so much of this will be virtual. But even with it being virtual, do you have any thoughts as to how we hear the HR people tell us it's so important for a candidate to fit into the company they're going into? what are things that you think maybe a student can say or do? Maybe it's something they put on their resume or a cover letter or even in an interview to sort of make them stand out a little bit, make them look like they fit in.
Wow, that's a great question. In with a non-pandemic, it was doing the best you possibly can in school, having a part-time job, which is far more difficult now. This idea of volunteering, I think, is helpful. I ran the internship program at the LA Ad Club for 25 years, and we placed 1,600 people in full-time jobs. And I can tell you by looking at one resume versus another, and we would get hundreds of resumes, but the ones that would stand out are have more activities, more successes, more involvement on campus, and they're not just doing the minimum, they're trying to do the maximum. But life is a bell-shaped curve, so you don't need to do the maximum, but you don't need to do the minimum. Do something maybe that is at the 8 or 9 level rather than 10, because if you have no success and you're doing way too much, that's not also good too. And I do like, if you were going to look at um, Netflix, boy, that's a great book that Reed Hastings that I'm almost finished with it. And I started it on Monday and today's what, Friday.
Excuse me, Larry, I've got just one other question, and I'm going to bounce over to, once our students graduate and they get jobs and now they're working at companies, and let's hope that in time they'll be back working in offices. Whether they're in an office or they're working virtually, they'll be working in teams. You mentioned that in your presentation. At every business I've ever known, it's about teams, and you have to work with other people. Well, our students are going to have a final project for this class where they're going to do a team presentation. So I wanted to just sort of ask you kind of an open-ended question. Your thoughts on, you've obviously done many, many, many client presentations. You've done presentations to the management of the agencies you've worked at, to the management of clients you've represented. What are maybe just a couple things that occur to you when teams are presenting very important information? Maybe they're pitching an account, maybe it's a new direction for the company. What are some of your thoughts on maybe things they can do?
Another great question. I think there are two ways of looking at on campus. You want to be able to participate in every team, and some people are better at presenting and some people are better at preparing the materials. Like if you're an artist, you may not want to um, present it, but somebody else is a better talker in a sense. But I think on both of those, and Brian, I taught 79 semesters. I never had a class that didn't have some type of team presentation. But I told them if they didn't feel like presenting, they needed to cooperate and work as much as anybody else. And I can tell you over what, maybe be about 400 teams at that. I would say I only had 1 or 2 bad teams, and it was just 2 people that just didn't didn't show up on time, and just kind of went off into outer space. And the rest of the team would say, that person just didn't work out. But it's this cooperation of working with people and listening to them and understanding what their needs and wants are, and being flexible. If you say we need to meet at 8 o'clock, but it's 8:30, well then agree on it's going to be between 8 and 8:30, or 8:15 is the starting time, and tell people that it's 8 o'clock. But again, it is working together, being prepared, doing the right amount of research, and then presenting the best job you can. And I really do think it's everyone participating is probably the biggest key, and listening to the best ideas. It's not the person with the most ideas, it's the one with the best and could support it. One final thought on that. I never said that. I never taught, and I never wanted any team to say, no, a team member say, I don't like that. They had to say, I don't like it for this reason, or I liked it for this reason. And that teams got along better, and the teams that got along better actually had a better fulfilling reputation and participation than the ones that kind of fought and were didn't get along. But the majority of people do get along, and they want to get along.
Larry, I think that's about time for us. So I just want to say thank you very much. I think you've shared an awful lot of really good things with our students, and to the students that are watching this. Larry had several links earlier in his slideshow. He's got a lot of great resources on his websites. I highly recommend it. And for those of you that might be marketing managers, he's got a lot of great marketing stuff there as well. So Larry, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for speaking to our students this semester at UT Dallas.
It is my pleasure. I'll do it anytime you need me. Thank you.